In the name I am that I am, son of tomorrow, I call forth the light of the living word, beloved Elohim, beloved archangel, beloved mighty Choans of the rays and the lords of karma. I call for the action of beloved Pallas Athena, beloved goddess of liberty, beloved Nada, beloved Kuan Yin, beloved Portia, beloved great divine director, beloved all-seeing eye of God, Cyclopeia. Let God's will be done, let God's will be done, let God's will be done. I do in the action of the sacred fire in this hour, descend on mighty cosmos, secret rays. I am the holding of the balance of Lord Gautama Buddha, beloved Sanat Kumara and the seven holy Kumaras. I call upon the sacred fire, I call upon the light of God that never fails. Beloved mighty I am present, come forth in this hour of the victory. Come forth in this hour of the victory of the God's flame. I demand the full power, beloved mighty, see me with us this night. Beloved Jesus, send to me, Lord mighty, Gautama and Sanat Kumara. Come forth now in the victory of the God's flame. Send the light of 10,000 suns. Beloved mighty, stand, mighty, stand, mighty, stand. Around this fortune now. I call upon the great single sun magnet. I call upon the light of God that never fails. Beloved is fair, beloved is fair, beloved is fair. I call upon the electronic solar rings of the great central sun, the seraphim of God. I call for the electronic fire rings. I call for the rings of the great central sun. I call for the great central sun magnet and the full power.
One of these days, I'm going to play the entirety of that track. That'd be fun. So when I did that track, by the way, I did do that track. And by the way, you were listening to Navigating the Doors of Divination. You're listening to the Doors of Divination. I'm Robert Phoenix, and this is what happens when you live on 5 hours of sleep every night and do your best to summon the vital forces to work in your favor on a daily basis. But welcome to the show, and welcome to 2 hours of scintillating, captivating, and hopefully illuminating internet radio. I will be doing live readings today. I think a lot of people don't understand that. You know, maybe I should make it more explicit when I post the Friday show. But I do live astrological readings, and I'll be doing that during the first part of the show today. And the second part of the show, the second hour of the show, it's a 2-hour show. I'll have an interview that I did with Les Visible, a.k.a. Visible, simply visible to those who can see him, who know him and can see him. He's visible. So we did this the other night, and I got to tell you, it's a pretty interesting interview. Of course, I have personal investment in it because I did the interview, but you got to hang on to the second hour because we go into some pretty fascinating places. And one of the things that we talked about, it's a big piece of what we talked about, is essentially how he became visible when he got his superpowers, his secret powers. And it was a 3-year kundalini, explosion of kundalini that set him apart from the masses in some ways. Certainly set him apart from his buddy John Hall. And you get to hear more about that. We talk about Richard Manuel of the band, and believe it or not, Charles Manson even shows up. So you don't want to miss that interview. That's in the second hour of the show. First hour of the show, it's me, it's you, it's your hopes, dreams, wishes, visions, aspirations, desires, longings, and laments. They can all come out here over the course of the next 50 minutes or so. I'll be happy to dip into the pool of astrology and summon the oracle so I can be at your service. This is my service. This is what I give to you, share with you, and bring to you. It's been a good week for me in terms of astrology. I've had a few readings with clients, and they've been off the charts good. I mean, really good. So this is a good time to tap into whatever it is I'm doing. I've got Chiron now sextiling my natal Neptune in Scorpio. So Chiron Neptune is is fairly intuitive and compassionate. So I've approached this gate, this door of divination, if you want to go with that metaphor. I've approached this with a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and now I'm lined up with the Chiron Neptune trine in my chart, and it'll be trining until February of next year. So it's going to be lasting an entire year. And I'm not alone. Obviously, there are other people that are going through the Chiron Neptune trine. They're born right around the same time I am. Does that mean that they're on the radio doing astrology readings for people? No, doesn't mean that at all. But because of who I am and where I've come from and what I've done, I'm predisposed to be able to tap into it in a certain way. And that's kind of how astrology works. Everything is built on your history, your stars, obviously, and what you've kind of accrued up into that given moment of time when major aspects or transits hit. That's what happens, and that's how astrology works. And so, for instance, if you were up into this, let's just say, for instance, okay, I was a different person. Let's say I was rich, okay, and let's say that I'd worked the majority of my life to get to this point, and now the Chiron Neptune trine comes into play, and let's say that Neptune is in my second house, or Neptune is in my 10th house, or let's make it one of the Earth houses, the 6th house, or possibly the 8th house, where it's other people's resources. So that would mean that I could potentially use the angle, the sympathetic angle between Neptune and Chiron to be charitable and to share my bounty with other people, because that would have been what I had worked on up until this point in time. Or let's say if you were not necessarily rich, or I wasn't necessarily rich, but I had done something else. I had invested a certain amount of my time or my energy and my resources into any number of fields or professions or points of interest. I would be called upon basically to share my compassion, insights, patience, understanding, emotions, desire to help, however, the ability or the predisposition to break down barriers. I would be called to do that based on whatever I had worked on up until this point in time. And it would be manifesting through whatever I had worked on up until this point in time. And that's, and then we would look at the chart and we would say, well, this is what this person was, invested in. This is what they've been doing. Yes, so the planets line up here. They connect here. We can understand why that this person's in a position to help people in X, Y, and Z. Because this is the path that brought them to this point. This door, and they open the door, and now they're allowing Spirit to work through them and hopefully pass through that door. That's what it's about. So for me, what have I done with my life? Well, I've invested a lot of time and energy to understanding things like astrology and numerology and mythology, popular culture, psychology. These are all things that I've invested a lot of time in. So now we come up to the Chiron Neptune trine. It's like, okay, well, I get to move that energy into this particular direction. Chiron, of course, in Pisces, that's in my 4th house, which is the house of home. And guess what? Guess where I am right now? I'm home. I'm doing this show right here in my home. Where do I do my readings? In my home. It's my studio. It is my temple. It is my cave. It is my monastery. This is it. It's where my south node is. So we pull from, or at least I do. I pull from this area, and where do I take the energy? I take it up into the 11th house, because that's where the curve, where the sweep of that trine is. The flowing angle from Chiron to Neptune. And my Neptune is in Scorpio, and it's right at the cusp of the 12th house. So it's Neptune 11th and 12th, which essentially hooks me up to what? The internet and the collective unconscious, which is the 12th house. And so here I am in my home where Chiron is, and it's moving the energy up into the 11th, through the internet, out into the ethers of the world, and to you. And that's, astrology 101. This is an example in action. So anyway, I've got the Chiron-Neptune triangle, and I just kicked in on the 21st of March, by the way. And I could feel it. I could actually feel it just, before it was happening. I had this experience a couple weeks ago where I went and I had some morning coffee at Starbucks. And I don't go to Starbucks very often. I'll tell you when I go to Starbucks. I go to Starbucks when I don't have any cash, because Starbucks is shameless, and they'll take $1.50 off my debit card for a cup of coffee. Normally, I would go to this other place, which is a community family-run joint around the corner from where I live, but I can't just do $1.50 on a cup of coffee or $2 on a double espresso. I have to go with cash. So if I don't have any cash on me, I'll hang out at Starbucks. And by the way, Starbucks does have Wi-Fi, so I can also go there and do a little work. So I went to Starbucks. I guess it was last Saturday, and I sat down at a table. It was one of these four tops, and there was a woman there, and she was kind of all over the place. She had her raincoat or her purse on the table, raincoat on another chair, and there was no other place to sit that had a suitable socket I could plug into for my computer, because I was going to do a lot of work that morning, and I did. And so I sat down. I said, "Can I sit here?" Yes. And so she moved her stuff, and we started to have little chit chat, and how these things are sometimes. They just kind of evolve. And then she tells me that she's going to this seminar because it was a Buddhist seminar. She shared me she's going to a Buddhist seminar because she is going through grief over the fact that her mother had died, her father had died, and her life partner had died, and they all died within the span of about 5 years. But you think, well, 5 years is a lot of time. 5 years, when you lose 3 people that are integral to your life, 5 years is nothing. And so she'd shared with me she was feeling guilt around the fact that she didn't appreciate them more while they were around. So this is all just happening and evolving, at the Starbucks. And I'm talking to her. And I'm not going to just, I don't know. So we talked, and I kind of opened up and said, well, you're right. And I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't quite remember what I said, but I knew that I was conscious, and I knew that I was tapping into this whole idea of kind of vibrating above the pain, vibrating above the suffering, and not to get to that place through denial or through some sort of supplication of making yourself feel good, but to actually go through the experience and to experience compassion to get above it. And that's not an easy thing to do for anybody. It's a challenging thing to do. And anybody that tells you otherwise is blowing smoke up your ass. This is one of the problems I have with the feel-good new ageism. You just turn it into a positive thing. You just keep moving forward. Well, I think that there's a time for that. There's a time. There's a pivot. There's a pivot in every experience where you can have a choice about how you want to feel about something. But if you go to make that choice before the pivot occurs, the pivot moment occurs or the nodal moment occurs, then you are in some ways cheating yourself from the completion of that experience. You're not allowing yourself to fully go through that experience so that you have owned it and resolved it, and now you can have a positive, or at least the most positive response that you could have towards a situation or an experience in your life that's been painful. I mean, I think one of the greatest disservices New Age philosophy has given us is that all we have to do is just, change our minds. And yes, there's a great deal of truth in that, but you can't change your mind, at least in my world. And maybe I'm antiquated, but you can't change your mind unless your emotions are also changed. And that's why affirmations, for the most part, don't work. Because what people are trying to do is they're trying to convince themselves that the world around them is great and that everything is hunky-dory and they don't have to pay attention to what's happening. And it's a very subtle form of mind control that you're practicing on yourself. And, sometimes it can work. Affirmations have never worked for me. They just haven't. I've had to go through the emotional current. And once I'm congruent with the emotional current, then there's a new state of mind that can emerge. Then you have a choice. And in fact, you have it's more than a choice. You have a responsibility to choose at that point. Because once you've had the emotional pivot, if you choose to remain in suffering at that point, then anything that happens to you is on you. Period. End of story. You have nobody to blame in your life but yourself in terms of how you hold on to your story. Once you've had the emotional pivot, you are free to choose. And it's different for each of us. And it's different in each experience. But there are times, let's go with the mundane piece, okay? And I talked about this in my interview with Visible. Last Saturday, I was at Costco. And I was tired. I was really tired. I've been staying up late a lot because I have a lot on my plate. I'm just trying to get so much done. My latest post that's up on the site, I finished at about 2:30 in the morning last night. That's because after I fed my kid and watched a documentary with him and got him to bed and spent time with some friends, on the phone or on Facebook, whatever, who needed the interface. By the time that was over, then it was my time. And it's like, well, I've got to update my website. People, need the content. My website needs the content. I need to do it to stay fresh, keep the flow open. So, I did it. But that was my choice. But I needed to. And this is kind of like where my life is right now. I don't sleep a lot these days. Anyway, so I was tired. I was at Costco. I was tired. And I'm not one of these people that spends $300 at Costco, and has the big, the big flat on wheels that you truck out. I don't do that. It's not I go to Costco for just a few select items. A couple of chickens, some almond butter, some eggs, Pellegrino, things that I can afford, that I can buy in bulk, that aren't going to kill me. And a lot of times, by the time I get to the front, I have maybe 2 or 3 items. And if you've ever been to Costco, you know that these lines can be epic. And when you're tired, well, they're more than just epic. They're nightmarish. They're Jacob's ladder, right? So I go there, and there's somebody in front of me, and there's a young woman. I don't know what's going on. Just got my part, and all of a sudden her mom wheels in with a shopping cart just filled with stuff. I'm like, oh, God. Can't I just get out of here, And I said something to her. Normally I'm not the type of person that says, hey, can I go in front of you unless I'm really in a hurry? And I've done it a couple times, like if I've had to go to school for my kid, and I've only had a couple items. And I asked her, and she said no. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And it was like a real power trip for her in a weird way. And I was really tired. And I got snippy with her. And I said, well, letting me go ahead of you would be the civilized thing to do. She didn't like that. So this other line opened up, and I went over there, and I could tell that she was pissed off at me, visibly upset. And it's like, okay, how do I change this? See, this is where the mind comes in. This is where you can use your mind to shift something in the moment. And I'm not talking about, big picture stuff, like where somebody dies in your life, or you find out that, somebody close to you has cancer, or, these are those big ticket items. You've got to work on those. Or you look back in your life and, you see that you squandered years of your life. Those are big ticket items. And just flipping a switch in your brain is not going to work. But in this moment, I could flip that switch in my brain, and I said to myself, you know what? I was a little edgy with that woman. Should she have let me go ahead of her? Yeah. If it was me, I probably would have done it. In fact, I know I would have done it. I didn't probably. But I had a responsibility for me in that moment, and to some degree even the world, that I needed to kind of right that wrong, or at least change that energy in that moment. So I did. And I walked up to her, walked from my line to her line. She looked at me. She had these burning eyes. Like, what the fuck does this motherfucker want, right? Oh, here he comes again. What's he going to say now? And I walked up to her and I said, hey, look, I apologize. I said, I apologize for being short with you. And the reason I was because I've had issues with lines in the past. And I have. One of my pet peeves with lines is people that camp out in lines and then bring 10 people into a line for a ride or for groceries. Do you know what I'm saying? Does anybody else share this pet peeve with me? You know what I'd like? I'd like to have like a switch, like a little button. That's like a trap door. When that happens, you just hit the button and they go whoop, they go right down and they land on like a little trampoline, like a trampoline conveyor belt. Maybe 6 feet or 5 feet below or 4 feet below. It wouldn't be too hard. They'd fall on their bums or whatever. And then the trampoline conveyor belt takes them all the way to the back of the line and pops them up in the back of the line. If I had a fix-it button for something like that, that's what it would be. So she triggered this kind of long-standing peeve of mine. That's what happened. Plus, I was tired. And I told her this. Look, it wasn't you. I just have an issue with lines and people that move into lines. And you had a right to be in a line. Your daughter was there. I get that. Anyway, I just wanted to apologize. And she was still kind of pissy with me. And I said, look, and I looked at her. I said, look, I'm being man enough to apologize to you. Now it's on you. Now you can be the person that has the moral compass in this moment. And what are you going to do with it? And then she softened up a bit. She did. She said, I accept your apology. And I could tell she let her pride down. So, that was a moment where in that moment I used my head. I turned the switch on in my brain. I said, I'm not going to be bigger than this woman. I'm not going to be bigger than this moment. Because quite frankly, I think that, if you want to know how we can change the world, it's moments like that. And I'm learning, all the time and more frequently that those are the moments that count. Because if I didn't do that, and maybe if I didn't say anything to begin with, it would have been fine, right? We wouldn't be having this discussion, and I wouldn't have taken up the last 10 minutes of your life talking to you about it. But we have this opportunity in these moments to change things on a conscious level. And I think that that's really vital, because now she left Costco differently. I left Costco differently. I was humbled. I was kind of a dick, and I was able to redeem that. I had enough love for myself and my fellow humans to say, you know what, this is not good for me. This is not good for anybody else. I got to step off and attend to this. And she had the opportunity now to leave Costco in a different way too. Had I not done that, who knows? Would her life have been the same? Sure, on some level, yes. But there would have been a grudge. And I wanted to be one less grudge in somebody's life. And even in my own life, I wanted that moment to be less of a grudge. So just kind of circling back to all of this, okay? You can change your mind in the moment. Now, what happened at Starbucks with the trine, and it was really the beginning of the Neptune-Chiron trine, is that something fundamental changed between this other woman who I met at Starbucks and myself. And the energy was very different. It was like she got up and she bounded out of the place, ready to go to her seminar. And I got an email from her because I gave her my website, and really specifically I wanted to connect with her because she had all this clutter in her life, and I have a friend who specializes in helping people get organized and get rid of their clutter, and they need work. And so I was playing the role of connector. Say, hey, I got a friend that can help you. Here's how we can get in touch. Check out my website. I sent her an email, and bang, she sent me an email back last night because she wanted to find out how to get in touch with my friend. So I connected that link in the chain, the great chain of being. And she said that everything that we talked about at the table at Starbucks that morning, they talked about in her seminar or her workshop. Almost everything we talked about all came out there. So it was like a preamble to what she was going through or about to go through. Very positive stuff. And this is where we can really make a difference in the world. Can we stop a war in the Middle East? Absolutely. How do you do it? You do it by having the most conscious level of interaction that you can with another human being. And it's not always easy. Trust me, it is not always easy. But that's what we're here to do. This is how we are in this world and not of it. All right, it is 10:30 here on the left coast. Let me give you the number. It's 347-308-8995, 347-308-8995. If you want to call in, I can do readings for the next half an hour. Look at your chart, see what's up with you, get into some astrology, take advantage of the Neptune-Chiron trine. Come on now. Don't want to miss out on that. And we can do that for the next 29 minutes or so, 28 minutes. And then I'm going to play the Visible interview that I did the other night, which I know will tickle you pink, and you'll get a kick out of it. It's really fascinating. I moved the show from Wednesday until Friday. Wednesday, I had a line of people in here on Wednesdays, and now nobody calls. Why is that? There's a call. Speak, and ye shall be answered. It's a 610 call. Where is 610? Let me just figure that out. 610 area code. Where is that? Sometimes I like to know. It's Pennsylvania. Let's see who it is. Hi, Ernie. It's Robert. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Robert. How are you today?
Who is it?
Denise.
Oh, hey, Denise. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little frazzled, a little tired, but happy to be alive.
Yeah, aren't we all?
happy to be upright.
So how's the weather out there on the West Coast?
It is cold.
Yeah, it's a little chilly today, but at least it's sunny. And not a lot of chemtrails.
Well, that's good. I mean, we haven't had chemtrails either, but we have had we've had a lot of overcast, which means maybe they're doing something behind the clouds. I don't know, but we've had pretty much nonstop rain for the last 3 weeks. We had no rain from October through the end of February.
Oh, well,
hardly any at all.
Rain.
And then all of a sudden, rain.
Yeah. Well, you need that then if you haven't had it for that long.
It's true, but it's also
dreary. Yeah.
It's getting in the way of my son's little league.
Aw.
So enough is enough. Okay, enough of the rain. We've had, no, we could actually use about another 2 weeks. It would, be a bummer because the season is already behind. They were supposed to start last weekend, but opening day got rained out, so they're already behind a week. But we could use the rain. Because the last thing that we need here in California are the state officials lamenting that we don't have enough water based on whatever it is, whatever standards they're adhering to, and then hammering everybody with higher rates and all the other stuff that we're going to have to deal with. So yes, bring the rain on.
Right, and also the propensity for forest fires and stuff out there. I know what I hear about anyway. So
yeah, the forest fires are. Here in California, the big problem with the forest fires isn't necessarily the dry tinder, although that can be a big part of it. We have a thing here called the Japanese bark beetle, and the Japanese bark beetle settles into oak trees, and oak trees are fairly prevalent here in the state of California. And what they do is they actually consume the oak tree from the inside out. So.
Wow.
So it looks like it's a really healthy oak tree on the outside, but on the inside it's mostly hollow. And what happens is that when there is a fire, these oak trees just explode into flame. So yeah, that's a big that can be a big problem. The other big problem is that if we go through a real dry period and then we get a lot of rain, we can get mudslides. That's a Southern California kind of thing. But we love it here. It's a great place to live. Other than that,
when the earth's not shaking,
other than that, being on the porch of all of Fukushima's radiation, it's lovely here. So, do you want me to look at your chart or do some astrological stuff with you?
Sure.
All right. When's the birthday?
It's December 30th, 53.
Okay. December 30th, 1953. There you go. Capricorn.
Right.
All right.
Pluto sitting right on, well, at least it was for a while, sitting right on my sun.
Oh, it's there. It'll be floating around your sun for the rest of the year. Yeah, how are you dealing with that? How are you feeling with that?
I'm not sure. I'm open to a transformation at work, but I don't know. I think I'm in a holding pattern, really.
So let me ask you a question. I mean, this is kind of a good. This would be a good exercise for me and for the audience. Do you notice any difference around how people perceive you at work? Are they taking you more seriously? Are they being threatened by you? I mean, because Pluto on the sun is very intense. It really can manifest in a very formidable character. Have you noticed any difference with how people relate to you?
Well, I happen to be unemployed at the moment, but I shouldn't say I feel isolated. I am somewhat isolated, and when I'm around people, it's like kind of an avoidance. People avoid me.
Interesting.
And it's not that I'm really, I'm not being, putting myself out there or being, verbal or obnoxious or anything. It's just, I guess, something about my aura that's off-putting. But see, I have Pluto in the first house natally, too. So I guess it's activating that maybe, too. I have a Pluto and Leo in the first, so.
Pluto and Leo in the first,
Yeah. So I'm kind of like almost feel like a monk at this point. I'm doing my isolation thing, but I study, esoteric stuff and astrology and
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much going on in the world. I'm just trying to kind of connect with the collective on a spiritual basis as opposed to being out there on a physical basis. I don't know. Just
No, I know. Yeah. Well, we look at the one planet that really, really demands our focus and our attention, and that's always Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
And being that you're a very Capricornian personality, with Sun in Capricorn. Did your Mercury move into Capricorn, or is it at the last stages of Sag? Because I'm just looking off of your solar.
Actually, I have Mercury at I think it's 1 degree 52 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Venus.
And
Venus
Venus
right
Mercury
there.
conjunction. Yeah, Venus Mercury conjunction. And then you've got Chiron also in Capricorn. So your true node. So you're a real Capricornian personality. And so, in this instance, Saturn would have, you'd have a very intense resonance with Saturn no matter what sign Saturn is in.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got it in Scorpio. So you're coming up for your second Saturn return.
Right.
And your second Saturn return is going to happen when really Pluto is still going to be on your sun.
I know.
So
it's been a pretty rough few years, and so I'm kind of just trying to roll with the punches, as they say.
Well, look.
Have faith. What they say, take what the Indians say, just let go of the shore. I'm trying to do that. Like just go with the flow and.
Yeah, and you've got Moon in Scorpio too, right?
Right.
So you're pretty formidable character, Denise.
And Mars.
Yeah, Mars too.
And Mars and Saturn conjunct. Yeah.
So you're really Scorpionic and Capricornian.
Mm-hmm.
So really, you could survive the rapture. You could get through the rapture. If you were left behind, if you were one of the left behind, you'd make it.
Going on someone's coattails.
You would figure out a way to make a delicious consomme of cockroach and fly or something like that.
Oh God.
Because you're meant to survive. So look, you're coming up on your second Saturn return. It's at the degree is extremely esoteric. It's 7 degrees, your Saturn in Scorpio. So it totally makes sense to me that you'd be spending this time, in study and being in the monastery. Let's look at your Sabian symbol for that. Let's find that out. See what that's all about. Let's see what we have here. So we go to 8 degrees Scorpio. Look at that. I had it. Look at this. I had the page dog-eared. How about that?
Oh, wow.
Interesting. It says Scorpio 8, a calm lake bathed in moonlight. How do you like that?
Yeah.
The keynote here is a quiet openness to higher inspiration.
Oh, so true.
I'll read what Dane Rudyard wrote. One could stress the romantic suggestions such an image evokes. But even at the level of a love relationship, what is implied is a surrender to two personal egos to the inspiration of transcendent feelings, which are generally, essentially impersonal. Love expresses itself through the lovers. For real love is a cosmic, undifferentiated principle or power which simply focuses itself within the souls of human beings who reflect its light. The same is true of the mystic's love for God. Man strives hard to achieve great things through daring adventures, but a moment comes when all that really matters is to present a calm mind upon which a supernal light may be reflected. So what you're doing is you're calming the lake. That's what you're doing.
Well, that's definitely the whole surrender thing, because I've been, I wouldn't say lately, but when I was younger, I think I was a bit of a control freak. But I realized that it was more out of fear that I was trying to control everything.
Right.
So I every day I just take a deep breath and I just say, I'm not gonna live my life in fear, and I surrender to higher, to the Creator, really, because He's one of the big picture.
Well,
so that's what I mean by I'm in a holding pattern. It's not me flailing around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to always, do what I think I should be doing. I'm more like feeling and open for suggestion from, the divine, really.
So I'll read you this last piece here. It says, this is the third stage of the 44th fivefold sequence. It tells us that beyond all efforts lies the need for peace and the readiness to accept illumination from above.
Wow.
The key word is quiescence. So what you're really doing to me is I think you're on it. I think you're really on your path.
I'm doing while not doing.
Yeah. No, you're doing the right thing. I think you're doing the right thing. Because you're getting prepared for what's coming towards you with your Saturn return.
Mm.
And I think the Saturn return is the next dissemination of your mission. I think you're going to...
depending on how fast Saturn moves, I mean, what is, by December 21st, 2012, is Saturn's in by then, right? It's what,
That's right.
October
Saturn moves into Libra. Saturn moves out of Libra and into Scorpio in October.
Right. So actually, by the time of the solstice, it may just be hitting it. I'm going to ascend, Robert.
Well, I tell you, you can ascend, but you may want to stick around because I think you're going to have a pretty solid time. So Saturn gets to 7 degrees Scorpio on the 5th of December.
Ah.
But at that time, Jupiter will be in Gemini. Pretty much.
And that's my Jupiter return too.
I know. It's going to be in Gemini at 11 degrees. So it's not quite at your natal Jupiter, which is what, like 17?
19.
19. So 8 degrees wide conjunction.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it's conjunct, and you'll feel it. You'll feel a sense of, buoyancy and a sense of optimism. That's just the nature of Jupiter.
Mm.
So while you're in the intensity of Saturn and Scorpio, it won't be so intense that you won't be able to step back and have some perspective and enjoy life. That Jupiter in Gemini, by the way, is one of the saving graces of your chart because it allows you to have some objectivity with your experience in a big way.
Yeah, there's so much down below. That's
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah,
that makes me a chatterbox, I think. Too.
You're an intense person, so I see good things for you. Really, I do, and I think your second Saturn return. Everything about It's funny because I don't know if you were listening to the story I was telling about this woman in Starbucks. She told me I haven't looked at her chart. She said she has 9 planets in Capricorn. It's like, wow, I got to check this out. So. But I told her, in the email, I said, the good thing about Capricorn is while the rest of us are getting older, you're getting younger. And the same holds true for you. I mean, Capricorns have great second and third acts in life. And
that's my joints.
Well, all I can say about that is glucosamine, some
right.
and some what is it? The SOD or the sodium oxide dismutase. Yeah, put some of that on your joints. You'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're going to be. You got a great. I'm not saying this just to make you feel good, but you've got a really, really solid, path ahead of you. Trust me on this. Once that Saturn kicks in your second Saturn return, the image I get is it's kind of related to the moon illuminating the lake. The image I get is like a ray locking in on you, like a tractor beam. It's like you get it. It's like a transmission, and you're locked in on the
thing. Because I really want to. That's what we're here for, is to hold light and to be light workers. So, I just feel that like I said, it's not really. I'm not really cognizant of what it is I'm supposed to do, but I think with the Chiron and the North Node there in my 6th, that I think I'm really here to heal. It's just that I have to heal myself first.
Yeah, and, I agree.
Yeah. So, I'm ready. I'm getting ready. Let me put it that way. I'm getting ready for whatever it is I'm supposed to do.
Well, and you're a snake, right? So,
yes.
but you've got a good 2-year run because the dragon, your dragon is actually fairly sympathetic for the snake, and then of course 2013 it's your year. 2013 is your year. I'm telling you, 2013 is the beginning of the next major chapter in your life.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and you'll get it. You'll get your walking papers. You'll get your orders when Saturn goes into Scorpio and hits it in December. I know this. I know this unequivocally. I know this. So just trust. Be in your process. Take care of your body. Right. Don't stress out too much. Try to make ends meet however you can, and know that you're moving towards something very significant.
Great. Thank you so much, Robert.
All right. Well, thanks.
And I'm looking forward to Less Visible coming on too on your show.
Yeah, it's a fun. It's not live. We recorded this, but it's a kick. You're gonna get a rush out of this. It's a really fun interview and pretty enlightening. All right, Denise.
Okay. Thanks so much. You have a good weekend.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hi. Thanks for waiting. You're on the air. Who are you, and where are you calling from?
Is that me?
Yes, it's you.
Well, it's Lizette Freeman.
Hey, what's going on?
I'm calling from the Wild West, as usual.
Yeah, it's the 415. I knew that, but I can never assume anything. You know what I mean?
Well, hey, that was a beautiful reading you just did, and I called in for your astrological expertise as well.
Yeah.
I have a situation that I just walked away from pretty much. It's been a relationship that's been going on for about, 6 years. And just about a week and a half ago, I just threw in the towel and said I can't take it anymore. And I don't know if it's really finished or not. And I don't know what kind of insight you could offer, but I could appreciate some insight.
Well, it's always great to hear your voice, by the way. So thanks for calling in. It's been a few months. Liz, I know you're an Aquarius. What year were you born in?
45.
And
February 1st. February 1st. 45.
February 1st was that magic day.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. There you are in all your glory. So you've got Moon in Libra, right?
I think I've got 5 planets or planetoids in Libra.
So you've got February 1st, 1945.
Yeah.
Sun Aquarius, 11 degrees. Moon Libra, very early. I think it's like 2 or 3 degrees. Libra, Mercury, Capricorn, Venus, Pisces, late degree. Mars, Capricorn, Jupiter, Virgo, late degree. Saturn, Cancer. So you've had Pluto break away from. You have Pluto in opposition to your Saturn for most of 2010. That would have been a very intense time. 2011. 2010 and 2011, very intense time for you with the Pluto-Saturn opposition. Uranus in Gemini, 9 degrees. Let's see, there's your Neptune in Libra, and then Chiron in Libra, 3 degrees. So a lot of your Libra stuff is very early. Black Moon Lilith, 8 degrees. We'd look at Libra in terms of relationship and the style and the ability to relate. And, and because your Moon, and because of Chiron, and because of Black Moon Lilith, and right now Saturn is squaring Black Moon Lilith. A lot of people don't really know a lot about Black Moon Lilith, and I don't claim to be an expert on it. I do know it and understand it to a certain degree. There are some people that are really terrific at Black Moon Lilith and get it. What's her name? Marina Darkstar really gets Black Moon Lilith. And woman who used to be on my show, Willow, is really into it. But it's really, kind of the sort of the headline for Black Moon Lilith is it's the denied feminine, right? Because Lilith is the wife that got kicked out of Eden. And so it's the denied feminine. It's the aspect of the feminine principle that we have that is not recognized individually. And then we look at the sign, and it's in Libra, right? So essentially what you're looking for in relationship is balance. You're looking for somebody who you can live with and work with and love with from a really balanced perspective. And if it's not hitting kind of these milestones of balance and synergy and harmony, meaning that you're not being respected, you're not being honored, the other person isn't giving as much as you give, then that's an issue. That's an issue. That's an issue for you with these planets in Libra. And with Neptune in Libra, there can be, and because it's so close to Black Moon Lilith and so close to your moon and so close to Chiron, they're all swirling together in kind of this, miasma of Libra with this Neptunian fog. And it's sometimes, for you, theoretically, it would be really hard to get a handle on any kind of relationship.
Oh, great.
Seriously, because it's kind of elusive. It's kind of there's not always a sense of definitive ground or statement, because Neptune plays a big role in this. Neptune is conjuncting your moon, and so there can be a lot of projection, both coming from you and to you. I mean, I think the most challenging piece would be for you to deal with the notion of disassembling romance, right? Because part of why we get involved with people in our lives is because, frankly, life is hard. It can be hard, and having somebody in your life can be wonderful, especially if it's, really connected, and you love and you kind of uplift each other and support each other, and enlighten one another and love one another. I mean, theoretically, this is what relationships can do. But what can happen, though, is when you've got, the moon and Neptune and Black Moon Lilith and Chiron, and they're all pretty much, smashed together, when you get out of balance, or when you feel like that there's not sort of a real simpatico or balanced interchange, then you have to go in and pull all that stuff apart. And that's when the illusion or the mystery or the mysticism or the romance, whatever that thing is, the allure begins to get unbraided. And now what are you left with? You're left with, well, this isn't really fun. Now I'm left with a process, and I got to get through this. And if I'm going to do this on my own, why am I with this person? Are they as committed to this as I am? Or can they communicate what I'm trying to communicate, and vice versa? And that's when the sledding gets a little rough, because you've got all these things together, and they're all in very sensitive parts of your chart. Like Chiron, part of having Chiron in Libra is really being afraid on some level to fully expose yourself in a relationship. That's Chiron. And generally speaking, here's what will happen if you have Chiron in Libra. It's a show and tell kind of thing, right? It's like, because Libra always wants to show the world what it needs, versus telling the world. So Chiron in Libra will be, I'm going to show you what it's like to be vulnerable. I'm going to show you what it's like to be open. I'm going to show you all these things. And if the person doesn't get hip to it and doesn't respond, then say, well, gee, thanks for sharing that. I'm going to share some stuff with you that I'm going to be open and vulnerable with, and we're both going to have our stuff out there, and we're not going to judge each other. If that doesn't occur for you with Chiron and Libra, you'll shut down. And I know you personally, and I know that you can be very open and sharing and honest. I know that from you. I've experienced that with you. And if somebody does not reciprocate in kind with you, that is not a good basis and foundation for a relationship. With that Chiron and Libra with you, you have to find somebody who can be as naked as you and okay with it. That's fundamental. And
that was the issue. That was the breaking point right there, when the person didn't even want to know. I thought I was going to make these disclosures and reveal things that person really needed to know to go any deeper into this relationship, but they didn't even want to hear those. They ran away from it.
Well, that's Chiron and Libra in
It was
a nutshell.
classic.
Yeah.
You hit it right on the head. You said exactly what happened to me.
So the other thing too, right, is you've got you've got Venus at the very tail end of being in Pisces, and the thing with Venus in Pisces, it's incredibly compassionate, and it can hold the space a long time for somebody, maybe to its detriment at times. So you have, so that's something that you're gonna, over time, still work with in your life. But here's the good news. I'm gonna give you good news. Okay, the good news is that in 2012, and it happens in August 2012, Jupiter moves into Gemini. So in the early degrees, you're going to have Jupiter trining Chiron, Jupiter trining your black moon Lilith, Jupiter trining your moon, Jupiter trining Neptune. So this is a very good sign. A very good sign for you in 2012.
Cool.
It's expanding. It's like it's air. You can breathe. It's circulating. It's bringing new people into your life. Fun, merriment, enjoyment, potential for relationship with Jupiter trining all these Libra planets. And you're going to get, for almost all of 2012 and part of 2013, you're going to get a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction because you've got Uranus and Gemini. That is really exciting and really stimulating. And, as Jupiter moves forward in 2013, you're going to get the Jupiter-Sun trine. So, once July, August rolls around, your party's really going to start. I mean, it's going to be, seriously, you're going to have lots of stimulation, lots of people, a lot of popularity. I would get as much rest between now and then as possible, to be honest with you.
Oh, absolutely. Going to have to work on my abs. Robert, I want to thank you. You are so insightful and I would say super intuitive. I've had great benefit from your tarot and your astrology as well. So thank you so much.
Liz, you're welcome, and miss chatting with you. So anytime you feel like you want to circle back and just say, hey, you know where to find me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
All right. Take good care. Say hi to Charlie for me.
Okay. Oh, will do.
Okay,
bye now.
Bye. Okay, that was our good friend, or my good friend, Liz. Whoops. Oh, 5112. Man, I cut you off. I'm sorry, 5112. That was an accident. Or maybe not. I don't know. 5112, I'm sorry. Hey, I'm going to have to take a break really quickly here because I have an hour left, and I've got to run the visible interview. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to jump into the visible interview. 512, I sincerely apologize. I'll be in the chat room and chatting away, hopefully quietly. So, but if I'm going to be playing the visible interview for the next hour, and I'll be in the chat room hanging out, answering questions on astrology. And 512, if you're there and you want to ask me any questions, that's fine. I'll do my best to type them out. Okay, so this happened on early Tuesday morning, so it was about midnight my time, and I think it was around 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock his time. So this is me and my good friend, Visible, all the way from Deutschland, and time traveling to the 70s and literally back to the future. You've been listening to the first half of The Doors of Divination. I'm Robert Phoenix, and I will probably sign off now because this will actually go to the end of the show. But I'll be in the chat room, and I'll see you Monday for the Monday mashup. Use your head to discern what's real and your heart to step on what's possible. Have a great weekend. Here's me, Invisible. So it's with a great sense of pleasure, honor, and respect that I welcome our good friend Visible all the way from Germany, or close or thereabouts in some mysterious region of the Teutonic Nether Kingdom. Back to the show. Welcome, Visible.
Good day, Robert.
So let's see. When was the last time we talked? It was probably about 6 weeks ago.
Something like that.
Okay, and you had just come through this major piece in Mexico, and I got to tell you, we've been talking. you already called. We already had our little chit chat, and you sound a lot better. So give us an update on how you resolved your psychic warfare. How did that all get worked out for you?
Well, interesting you should mention that, because it's in the process of working out right now. In communication with everyone, and I have reimbursed them to a large degree for funds outstanding, which kind of got involved because of the quickness of my departure, and it seems amicable at this point, as generally it always is when I leave it in the hands of the divine. And now I'm hopeful that it will move into a new dynamic, which may possibly even restore things to where they were, or at the very least leave things in a friendly and manageable state. And that's my hope at this present. And as far as dealing with psychic warfare and such things, I reference all that stuff back to my invisible friends. They take care of that for me. And anything I'm being put through for a reason. And because I have that view concerning it, it doesn't impact upon me the way it might with a lot of people, who, don't exactly know how to handle it. I always figure whatever comes up for me is for the purpose of demonstration.
Right.
It's being done. Yeah, exactly.
So, one of the things that comes up for me when you talk about that or reference that is I was at Costco on Saturday, and I had, I was super tired. I, didn't have a lot of sleep, and I wound up, getting into kind of this like weird line thing with this woman, and I kind of snapped at her, and I thought about it, and I could tell that she was upset and kind of looked at me cross-eyed. She was, talking to her daughter like, that's a bad man or whatever,
You're a bad man.
Yeah, and so I thought about it, and I said to myself, you know what? I have a responsibility to, do something about this. Because I didn't want to turn that energy loose into the world, right? And
Exactly.
And I walked over and said, hey, look, this whole line thing, I got triggered by other line things that I've had in the past, and I apologize to you. It wasn't personal. It was something else, but I apologize to you. And she said, I accept your apology. So I guess I'm bringing it up because we have a responsibility sometimes to, all the time, I think, to have a sense of maintenance with, these psychic agreements that we have with people. It sounds like that's what you were attending to.
Yeah, well, Jesus Christ said it very well. He said, make your peace with your enemy while you are in the way with them. Mm-hmm. Like, in other words, while the conflict is taking place, rather than to not do so and later to have it come up in a very unfortunate manner.
Yeah, well, that's what I was feeling, and so that's exactly what I did. So you've got that resolved, and you're humming along. Generally speaking, how is the view from the inside these days?
Oh, well, I got to tell you, things are really good. I look at the external world and all the features that come to my attention, and I think, well, there's no reason why I should be feeling as good as I do. But for some reason, my optimism is at a very high level. It remains at that level, and I'm going with that. I just figure, as I have figured for many, many years, everything's under control for the purpose of demonstration. Mm-hmm. So whatever is happening in the world is just the logical and supernatural outworking of conditions that exist for the purpose of demonstration, so that we may learn from what we observe or experience, because that's the only way to get out of the situation en masse and also individually. So
I would agree with that. And I don't know whether you've picked this up or not, but Cliff High had his doomsday scenario, which I think we actually talked about the last time we were on the air together. And, his whole thing was, here's a specific date. It was March 2nd through March 6th or 8th. And, he was on Mancow, and he said, well, this is what's going to happen. It's going to go down like this. And it didn't happen. Nothing remotely happened in that way. And then we had this whole, Earth moving towards this dark mass object on the equinox and hitting what was called theoretically the gravity trough, and there was a lot of expectations around major seismic activity, which did happen just a couple days before the 22nd in Mexico, the 7.9 earthquake off the coast of Acapulco. But still, again, there was a real sense that here was a major event that we were approaching, on the event horizon, and it didn't happen. And I think that these things are interesting because it's out there, and yet we seem to be dodging these, sort of cataclysmic events. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, let me address Cliff. After I knew that I had been discussed on the radio show, this was on James Janicek's Feet to Fire show, I went ahead. I hope I didn't. That's the reason I'm mentioning it. I hope I didn't upset Cliff, because at the end I said, well, if anyone is in contact with Cliff, please tell him I found his missing F, and I'd be glad to send it to him. He spells his name CLIF.
Right.
And I made some kind of mention of the situation with, his predictions. On occasion he's written things that gave me the impression that he was very depressed concerning his readings. And I really feel for the guy, because he does splendid work. He seems like a very nice person. But I think he takes it too personally, a lot of these things, in the sense of when they're looming. And not merely just, being detached and sitting back. And I can understand that, because I feel personally involved in a lot of things myself sometimes. But now, to answer your question, I have noticed over the last 5 or 6 years that I occasionally make predictions. I mean, they're not hard, fast predictions, but, I feel like something's coming up at this particular time. And I hope a lot of the time when I talk about it, that talking about it works as a force in opposition to its occurrence. If you speak about it, and enough people speak about it, well, whoever it is that's trying to manipulate these things goes, oh, well, and maybe back off and want to come in stealth-wise from some other point. I don't know how true any of that is. But anyway, I have found that just about any prediction I make is wrong. So therefore, I am not a seer in this regard. And as far as the things that actually happen, and they seem like rumbles and rumors more than the actual effect that we might be anticipating, I very much think that, there's a benevolent energy operative that keeps giving us endless second chances until such time as that second chance, that window of opportunity closes.
Yeah. I would tend to agree with that. In a lot of ways, it gives me a sense of encouragement to know that my take on this is that there are always these I don't know how you would call them, forces or energies that are kind of a direct result of our quote unquote enlightened interactions. That we're like banking our conscious thoughts and our conscious will, and saying you're sorry to somebody in the line at Costco. Somehow, somewhere, that shows up in the news sphere.
Absolutely, just like Cliff's figures do.
Yeah.
When he's
So I don't know. I mean, I tend to think that's where these things get balanced out somehow, some way.
Yeah, I tend to believe that, a lot is made about the fact that, we're all under the influence of karma. And there are some schools of thought that say it's really fixed. There's no way to avoid it. But see, there's that free will thing where at any given moment we can transition or change how we respond to circumstance. And that, just like a rock thrown into a still lake, will ripple out across the entire surface of the lake. So that part of the whole thing with the apocalypse is that it transforms our consciousness. When it transforms our consciousness, it transforms our thought and action. Our thought and action then impacts upon the dynamic that is set up to be gone through and alters those conditions.
Yeah. You know, this whole concept of karma, I was getting into this with some people on my website, and you know, a long time ago, somebody who I studied with basically said that karma is really just, and this was a pretty, you know, high individual. He said karma was just a concept, and it only existed if we kind of agreed upon it. And that, you know, and that really made an impact on me. And then I thought to myself, well, you know, do the Illuminati or the cult of the serpent, you know, or the Zionists or whoever you want, you know, whoever the, you know, bad guy X, you know, do they not believe in karma? Are they playing by a whole new set of rules while all these karma-following people are, you know, engaged in another set of rules? I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, first of all, let me quote Shakespeare from one of, I forget which of his plays, where he says, "A wise man rules the stars." Because karma is basically dealing with planetary interaction. And that's why all of this is already set up way in advance. The structure of the whole play, the whole story that we all share in is set up in advance, and the planets and their movements create circumstances that follow up to the resolution of all of these things. And as far as karma being a concept, I suppose there's a way of looking at it like that, but it doesn't really matter whether it's a concept or not. If people believe in the concept to begin with, then it could just as well be whatever the other explanation would be anyway. Mm-hmm. And, trying to find what it is, how I wish to say it, and sometimes that can be a little difficult. Karma, you know, it's right there. It goes down to the cellular level. And everything that we do has got a lot of programming behind it. Mm-hmm. To consciously will change on your own part. It's never harder than when you're trying to change. If you're just leaving things go, it's pretty easy to just move right along the course of whatever that corridor is through which you're moving. But when you seek to change, it's like that I-ching thing, difficulty at the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of difficulty at the beginning, Dick Cheney just got a new heart. Did you see that?
I know. I wrote about it yesterday.
So we're now. this brings up an interesting concept, right? Where did Dick Cheney get that heart?
Exactly.
You know.
Well, you won't find that out.
No. I mean, do you think it was that they ripped it out of somebody in the middle of some crazy sacrifice?
Through the Tel Aviv consortium.
Yeah. So what would be the karma? What would be the ultimate karma of the heart that Dick Cheney would receive? Well, I mean, hearts have cellular memory, right? What would be the ultimate karma for the heart that he would get?
I said that. I guess they kept Ted Bundy's heart on ice. You know, Dick Cheney. It's no surprise that a guy like Dick Cheney, his heart would attack him. You know, just out of defense for its basic operating dynamic. You know, and however long that's going to actually work for him, I don't know. But we'll all, I think, most all of us, be glad to see the back end of him.
Well, I think it would be really interesting if he somehow managed to get a heart of somebody that was like an enlightened Buddhist or something like that.
Good person.
That would get played out nicely.
That could be really interesting. He'd have to go rat himself out.
Would be good. He had his first quadruple bypass surgery at the age of 43. What does that tell you?
Well, as I say, that man is such a ruthless psychopath with just such incredible indifference to the well-being of the larger majority, to the point that it's ludicrous. As I say, the basic state of the heart, what it does, what its responsibilities are in terms of the person who's carrying it, everything that Dick Cheney is goes contrary to it. So it's absolutely no surprise.
Yeah. Well, he's going from heartless because he had that pump thing. you know, from heartless to actually having a heart. So it'll be very interesting. Dr. Strangelove gets a heart.
Yeah, right.
So have things cooled out on the rents mezcal front? I saw that you did a column in support of Jeff, and it had the most epic amount of responses I'd ever seen with one of your columns. I think there was like 200 plus comments on that thing.
Sure.
Has that cooled out at all?
Well, I haven't discussed it with Jeff because I like to, just not get any more deeply involved than I already am. But what I had done was I let all the people who posted my work know that I was no longer going to submit my work until this thing was resolved. Mm-hmm. Now, I seriously doubt that I had any real effect upon it. But immediately after that, it all stopped happening. And so I was very grateful for that. There's a number of players involved here, and I haven't seen much of anything connected to it since, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But there are a number of players engaged in this who each have their own particular agenda and don't want it to die down. There are people who really dislike Jeff for one reason or another. I personally like him a great deal. I think he's, given everything he has to deal with and all the rest of it, I admire the way that he goes about it and approaches it. And so he's had some difficulties in his personal life with relationships and different things like that. Geez, who hasn't? You cannot hold that against us. It's what a person does afterwards or the efforts that they try to make within the situation that really count. Because we're given challenges, there's too much schadenfreude running around, People get themselves in situations where they can be perceived as acting inconsistently or badly, and they never recognize the fact that there but for fortune go they, and that soon enough the time will come when they will be in the very same situation, and that is why it is so incredibly important to exercise compassion when you are in the observational state in respect of other people who are going through, what they're going through.
I thought it was, I've got no beef with Henry. I don't really know Jeff, but I've interacted with Henry, and he's linked to my stuff before, and but I thought it was really shaky ground on Henry's part to go after Jeff in relationships, because Henry, in spite of his
precisely
psychological understanding of relationships, his relationships haven't been that great either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I made it a point not to be critical insofar as it was really possible of Henry, because, he has his own reasons. All I mentioned was that I disagree with some of his takes on women, mm-hmm. and that I don't believe that men should put themselves in too much of a position to be discussing it too extensively, that that's not really their theater of operations. However, that was all I really said about him. Otherwise, I think the man does some really good work now and then, and that he does bring up some very interesting things that I haven't seen before. And hopefully he doesn't see me as an adversary. I was merely trying to, help to make the situation better. But you got to be very careful, like what they say to physicians: first, do no harm.
Right. I mean, I didn't. I was scanning his site almost daily as that was going on, and I never saw anything related to you coming from him directly. I saw a few mentions from some of his readers about you, but nothing around Henry towards you. I'm glad it's resolved itself, and they've sort of called off the dogs on one another, and because frankly, we don't really need that. To be honest.
No, it makes all of us look bad. I mean, that's that divide and conquer thing at work again. When you can get the people who are doing the best work to really keep things in front of the public and help and assist in the change of this apocalyptic time, to have them fighting with one another, I mean, well, yeah, of course, that totally serves the purpose of the dark side. Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about Alex Jones? I mean, do you feel like he is trafficking in divide and conquer, or do you think that Alex Jones is more of a unifying force than that?
No, I think he's a complete gatekeeper. I think he's a bombastic, over-the-top, self-congratulatory, paranoia-spreading agent of the other guys. First of all, most of his advertising comes from a Rothschild complex. He's got a Rothschild lawyer.
Yeah.
He's neck deep in all of that. He will not admit to certain fundamental and obvious truths concerning the fact that Israel did 9/11, and he makes really ludicrous comments like the Saudis, control Hollywood.
Yeah, the Arabs run Hollywood. I mean, that really disqualified him in a lot of people's books when he tried to peddle that.
I can't stand to listen to him. The very sound of his voice is grating, and he's shrieking, and he sounds like some sort of woodland creature, and he really pushes the paranoia, and I really don't care for that. Another individual who I have noticed has gone through what I call the Christopher Hitchens syndrome, where you're really saying a lot of the right things, and then all of a sudden you make a 180-degree turn, and it's inexplicable. You can't figure out why they did it. Is Gordon Duff? He of late has really been distressing to me. He most recently, and I commented on it in one of my blogs here just recently, he made the comment that although, well, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, although it's pretty certain that Israel was involved in 9/11, it's a completely absurd lie and wrong and all the rest of this to infer or say that American Jews had any connection to it. But I mean, if you go to the website, if you go to Google and put in all the proof in the world, Israel did 9/11, and then you go to that website, there is a long, long list of all of the American tribe members, from Larry Silverstein, Fife, Pearl, all the rest of these people, the Project for a New American Century, this entire network of individuals, Dov Zakheim and all the rest of them. And those are all, they're dual nationals, of course, but they are Americans. And for him to say something like that, it's like immediately the little bell goes off in my head, and he's been reached. He's being paid.
Right.
He's getting something out of the equation. Either he's operating because of some form of threat that's directed toward him, or more likely he's operating out of a state of benefiting from it. Because, it's just, he didn't used to talk this way. And now, and I'm not the only one noticing this, and now he, I don't know, and I don't want to get adversarial with him either, but, I have to call him as I see him, and there's definitely something wrong there.
Yeah, Kaminsky called him out about 6 months ago.
Oh, yeah, John Kaminsky. Sure.
And he noted that in one of his newsletters, and he did kind of an about face with him as well. I don't really read his column all that much, but I could see where, he's pretty influential in the whole Veterans Today thing.
Yes, he is.
So I could see where he would be kind of a key person to get to. I feel like we're gossiping though, but what about Ike?
Oh, yeah.
What about Ike? What is your take on Ike?
Oh, David Icke. Well, David Icke, he's one of the first people I was exposed to. This is back when I had first just begun to get on the internet, and I was buying his books. And I have to say that among researchers and people that do all of the basic work prior to actually coming out with an opinion or a summation, that there's no one that can touch him on that level. However, he does engage himself in certain things that I look at it and I go, I don't know about this. Like the recovered memory thing of a lot of these women, Nevada, what's her name, and then this other woman, I forget,
right?
Who supposedly had sex with Bush Sr. and were engaged in all these really just bizarre sorts of interactions. And you find out one of them is married to a CIA agent or had some sort of a, well,
Kathy O'Brien. You're talking about Kathy O'Brien.
Yeah, there you go.
And she was married to an ex-CIA guy.
Right.
But you're right. And yeah.
the stories are crazy, okay? And you have to think to yourself, you know how these people operate. These people would not have lived to tell that tale if there were any, fire where the smoke is. And so that kind of thing, that kind of put me off when I saw him, putting that out. And he does make certain observations on certain things. He is very much a person of very high self-promotion. He's almost like a carnival operative in that degree, and larger than life, and very, very deeply into having himself be very widely known. I can't say that I would criticize that, too harshly, because, we all have different personality makeups, and all of us are engaged in some amount of self-promotion, and so I don't really hold it against him.
Right.
I'm merely pointing out my observations about it. I don't really go to his site. I don't go to Gordon Duff's site either. When I read something from either of these people, it's because I got it off whatreallyhappened.com or Rants or Truth Seeker or some of these other sites that I do visit. Mm-hmm. And as far as Ike goes, I do not compare him to Alex Jones in any way. I think that David Icke, is uncompromised. Mm-hmm. And so in that regard, I cut him a certain amount of slack. I'm merely bringing up things that have crossed my radar.
He's got this big event coming up at Wembley Stadium in October.
Wow.
And I'm like, how does David Icke nail down Wembley in October? That's right on the heels of the Olympics too, by the way.
Huh.
Well,
I can't really speak to that, and it's possible that he's up to his neck in it too. But he does have a very wide audience.
Yeah.
So, and international, he is like Bob Dylan. He's out on the road 365 days a year almost, and he does these exhaustive seminars, 8 hours at a time, in Australia, on just about, as far away as he can get from wherever he is. And so he has, over time, developed, quite a very large following.
Yeah.
Wembley Stadium, that's big, though.
That is huge. The first time I heard him was on Art Bell's show back in the 90s.
Sure.
And I actually thought David had a lot to offer back then. I mean, I felt like he was way out in front of a lot of this stuff.
Certainly he was.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So what?
He was.
Go ahead.
He was in South America at one point some years ago. I forget what it was. He did not say that it was an ayahuasca experience, but I, reading between the lines, have no doubt that it was. And he talked about these things that were happening to him, and in some ways gave the impression of a lot of power and the rest being invested in him and what he had to do. And I always thought that was a little interesting, too, how his take on it, with the god ayahuasca.
Well, it's everybody has their kind of, not everybody, but a lot of people that traffic in this world that, that we orbit in, they have their Moses story, right?
Exactly.
And that was David's Moses story. Patricia Corey, her Moses story was when she walked into the center of a crop circle in England, and that's when she started to have her contact with the people from Sirius, and her first couple of books were terrific. But everybody it seems like they have that Moses moment. Did you ever have that Moses moment?
I've had a whole lot of Moses moments. My big moment came when I was 21 and I had that full-blown kundalini experience. It opened the doors to all of my past lives. It opened all sorts of abilities and things that I had at other times, which I did not come into this life with. And from that moment on, and the intensity of it lasted for 3 years before it integrated back into this Merkin mix that we have here. And since then, I mean, the amount of supernatural experiences, they're just pretty much routine. So to put one up over the other, it's really hard to say, because you really have to look at these experiences in terms of how they changed you, not how big the experience was, not how mind-blowing it was, but to what degree did it actually transform you as a result. And then that brings in a whole nother.
Did we talk about your kundalini moment at all in any of the other times we've
I don't think so.
Do you feel okay talking about it?
Sure. In fact, I can tell some very interesting things about it. At that time, I hung out in DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C., and my best friend was John Hall. And he played with the group Orleans and was a studio musician for Janis Joplin and a whole bunch of other people. And he wasn't doing that at the time. At this point, he was still just, playing with different bands in the D.C. area. And there were other musicians that we all interacted with, Jack O'Connor, a drummer, Terry Jones, who went to Canada and became a folk singer. And this one night, John came to me in the park in DuPont Circle and said, hey, we're all going out to Terry Jones's house. Terry wasn't even there. His father was a colonel in the military, and he had this really nice cabin out in the Virginia woods in a very, secluded location. And so we all got into the car. There was 4 or 5 of us. And we drove out there, and we all took this LSD. And I remember sitting there, and John was playing a particular series of notes on the guitar, which sounded very much like a Hindu raga. And all of a sudden, I felt this, energy appear in me, and I was going, what the heck is this? And I thought that I was under some kind of a spell, like it was like witchcraft or something. And I was looking around the room and seeing one guy or another and thinking, are they responsible for this? And the force was becoming very, very overpowering, and I thought, oh, my God, what am I going to do? And then I said, I'm just going to let go. I'm just going to let go and trust God in this respect. And boom, I did, and it just rose up in me. I remember looking at the walls and seeing these pictures. They were like graphic pen and ink drawings. What they actually were knights in armor, but they looked to me like samurai guys from Asia, and they kept changing back and forth, and I realized, East and West, they're both exactly the same thing. They just differ in the way they present themselves. And I looked at my hand, which went into that position that you see the Buddhas and all the rest of them have, with the 2 outside fingers extended, and then, like the devil horns thing that you see, the bush flashes and the rest of it. Only,
right.
Of course, it's the same energy regardless, Anyway, I saw a green holographic outline all around my body, everywhere. Went out about ½ an inch, and it totally was everywhere in my body. I looked down at the Persian carpet, and my hands started going down toward it, raising up and down like I had a puppet on the hand, and all these little red devils came up, and they had their backs bent to me, as if the force in me was mastering all of these things. Mm-hmm. And at that moment, I became completely telepathic, and I was right inside John's mind. I could read his thoughts, and John became suddenly aware of me, and he freaked, and he pushed really hard to force me out of his mind, but it was impossible because there's only one mind, which I recognized right at that time, and everybody was noticing something very strange was going on. And I got up, and I felt so much force in my form. And everybody was pretty terrified and scared shitless by what was happening because the whole house was vibrating. And 2 of them were in the kitchen, and I walked in, and I looked at them, and they were giggling kind of nervously. And I pointed my finger at one of them, and his feet just went right out from under him. And he crashed to the floor. And I went, oh, Jesus. I thought, well, I've got to get out of this space with these guys. So I went upstairs, and I was looking in the mirror, and I saw my face, and my face kept changing into all these other faces. Going back, I could see that, that was Egypt, and this is China, and this is different places. And since that time, I've been able to feel other people's faces in mine wherever I am, almost as if I am them at that time. Mm. And anyway, at this point, I went outside, and there was a manicured lawn out there surrounded by woods, and I started walking across the ground, and my feet were coming down on the earth and just making it shake. And I looked out, and I saw to my left on the lawn 5 golden serpents, holographic cobras, coiled and with their heads up and all fanned out. And off to the right, further back, were, I forget how many cats. It was either 6 or 9. But they were a green silhouette, much like the green that was over my body. And they were a side profile. There was just the outline. And the number 9 was inside each one of them that covered, pretty much the expanse of their being. And there was all this energy and action going on in the woods. And I thought, I'm going to go walk in there. Just like the whole Devic realm was suddenly open. I started moving in that direction. It was like, you're not going in there. You're not So anyway, I come back. I go into the house, and man, I'm telling you, and they're watching me from the windows and stuff out there. And I go back inside, and everybody is like, their minds are just absolutely blown, and they don't know what to do. And so I forget who said, probably John, we got to go back to D.C. Let's go back to D.C. And so we all get together and get in the car, and not a word was said. And that was like 80 miles out where we were. They drive directly into DuPont Circle. They let me out of the car, and they ducked off. And John and I never really had any kind of something happening after that. He was totally freaked. He went on to become a New York State Congress member. He was defeated in the last election. And, well, after that time, oh, my God, all kinds of supernatural things started happening in the park. And I never did. It was winter was coming, and in the winter I didn't have to wear a jacket. I was in a state of dynamic tension all the time. I would stand for hours on Wisconsin Avenue in Georgetown outside this drugstore, just like with my hands held like I was holding reins, and just a state of total compression. And the amount of things that happened after that. I mean, I could go on for days. So anyway, that was pretty much a bit of a brief outline of what. But then after that, oh my God, my acid trips after that were totally transformed. I mean, everywhere I went, I would see enormous serpents coming in and out of the ground and moving. I realized everything was an expression of this particular serpent power. And the man on the beach had told me that God was a serpent. And the man I met who actually caused this to happen, I had met him several months before on a beach in Big Sur at Lantone Creek. And then also, I mean, on certain occasions, I would look like at a tree's trunk, and I would see these red hieroglyphic letters written into the composition of the tree, or any other thing that I would look at. If I looked into my hand, I would see these flaming red letters, much like a Chaldean or maybe the language that the tribe took, which they call Hebrew, but actually came from a previous hieroglyphic thing, which I believe are the Chaldeans. But anyway, I would see it everywhere, and I realized that was the vibrational language of the particular item that I was looking at. I could see it in the sky. I could see it wherever I looked.
So just going back, so these guys, they dropped you off in Washington, D.C. They didn't say anything, and then you and John Hall really didn't connect after that?
Not really. No, not at all. And it's funny because a few years later I had gone to Woodstock because my friend Billy had taken me up there to meet Father Francis, this Archbishop of the old Catholic Church who lived on top of the mountain, and who I then wound up staying with for some numbers of months. And one day I was, John's star had risen, so he was now playing with a group I think called Kangaroo in the village, and that had moved on to other things. And this was before Orleans, but he was now doing studio work and such. And so he had made some money, and he bought himself a big house up on Ohio Mountain Road. And I remember walking up that road. I was going up to, for some reason, somewhere, and here comes John walking down the road. And I go, "Hi, John." He goes, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I live here, John." And I was here before you got here, obviously. But anyway, one time he picked me up hitchhiking, and another time, I would see him around. But he wanted no part of me.
Yeah, wow, that's wild. So, did they think that you were possessed or something? I mean, what was their rationale? Do you know?
I never got any feedback from them. It was obviously I didn't have any idea myself what it was that happened. I didn't know until I saw a Buddha sitting in an antique store window in Palm Springs, and I went, "Oh, wow, that's what happened." I didn't know anything about the Hindu gods prior to that. I didn't know any of these things. I was basically, deeply into Western philosophy and things of that nature. And what these other guys thought, I have no idea. They just knew that something very, very strange had happened, and there was a lot of power in the room. Like when I knocked those guys' feet out from under them, or it was telepathic, or
right?
Just the force,
Yeah. Wow. And this stayed with you for 3 years?
Yeah, it stayed at that, very close to that level for 3 years. And then it kind of integrated. It stayed with me through prison and through various, some of the things that happened in prison were really off the charts, man. I mean, my God. I mean, for the purposes of demonstration, you know. And I was in one time in one of the prisons was 90% black. So you can imagine me around all these gangsters and stuff. And I mean, I just had it in command. It was absolutely amazing. And at one point, they had sent me to Petersburg Reformatory, and I was totally in this state. And so they put me up in the hospital part of the prison. And after a few days, they put Guru up in a name tag on the door, and everybody would come and visit me. All sorts of really amazing things happened. The warden would come over and play chess with me. I would hold court every day sitting on my bed in a lotus position. And there were people from the street that I had known from out there I knew of, and minds were blown too. I remember at one point, I think Bobby Kennedy had just gotten shot. And I was standing up at the MTA kiosk, which is medical technical assistance. They were guards, basically. And there was a big dormitory with bars on it where they would keep, 12, 14 people if they came in for particular reasons, like everybody had the flu or some kind of thing. But anyway, I was standing there by the door, and we were watching this TV show. And one of the MTAs turns to me and goes, "Guru, would you close the door?" And the door to my right was partially open, but it was a good foot away from me. And what caused me to do this, I don't know. I reached out my hand and I said, "Oh, that's okay. It's coming to me." And the door opened right into my hand, and I pushed it shut. Didn't act like it was a surprise at all. And off over in this dormitory was 9 black guys and 1 white guy that I happened to know from the street. And they were all in there for raping this one white boy, and they'd all come to clap. So that's why they were in there. And they saw what happened. They started going, like this. And the medical technical assistant turns to them, and he goes, "You better be quiet, or I'm going to send Guru in there." And so I went, "Yeah." And I walked over to the cell door, and they all jumped off their beds and got underneath them. It was really something else, And, yeah, I mean, there was at one point, this one guy tried to wrestle with me in the hallway, and I just put him down like a child. And he was going, "Oh, my God." He says, "I'm really strong. How did he do this?" And I used to go around in my bare feet, and I would kick the tile walls with the pad of my foot and make the wall ring. It was really something. Oh, it's all kinds of things happened in there.
So, what possessed you to do some of those things? Like, what possessed you to kick the wall?
Oh, well, I was just under the complete control of the energy that was in me. It was making all those decisions. I had nothing to do with any of that. This is all some kind of purpose of demonstration thing. I had no idea what was really going on. All I knew was I had to be in this state, because otherwise I could well turn into meat in an environment like that.
Right.
I mean, this was a gladiator school, and this is one of these kind of places where, I mean, you're either going to bring it, or you're toast. And I saw a lot of guys that were in that situation.
So is this something that you summoned, that you invoked, or did it just happen spontaneously?
Well, I did invoke it prior to my arriving there. But then once it took hold of me, it was it. But how do I know whether I actually initiated that or whether it just came up and gave me the impression that I initiated it? I will say this, that it's out of my command. I have a spiritual teacher, the man I met on the beach, who, oh my God, just to even see him, it was unlike any guru I ever saw anywhere. He was, I believe, the living embodiment of God. And, when I met him, the first thing that happened was, I had the I-ching with me, and I walked up and I sat down, and I said, in front of him, all this was being scripted. I had no idea. I was on acid. And I said, "Do you know who wrote this book?" And he goes, "I think a king and his son." And I went, "Oh, okay." I was completely under a spell. I had no idea that I was, but I was. And then he jumps up and he goes, "Everything's under control. Take the reins." And he moves his hands, like he's holding reins toward the sky, and 3 birds fly by. And you could see that they were flying on these invisible currents from his hands. And he said, "God is a serpent. Everything's under control." We already said, "Take the reins." And he said, what other things did he say to me? Oh, at one point we're crossing a guy Donovan who wanted to string a bell across the valley, and he was there with his girlfriend. And at one point, I'm discussing God or something, and this one lady turns to me and she goes, "Don't you know that you're God?" And then she turned kind of to this master, and he reared up, got the way he would do things like this, and he went, "Yes, you're God," and stuff like that. And I would say things, different things to him, and he would give me these like really usual responses about the world. At one point, I was asking, I said, "Well, this is all going to work out, right?" And he'd go, "I don't know. I don't know." He kept saying, "I don't know." And at one point, I was walking with him, and I found myself saying, "I don't know." And I really don't know. And I realized that fundamentally, I didn't know. And it was 3 months later that the event happened to me in the woods. And prior to that, and then I was in jail for a brief period there. And I remember I was doing this, and I realized that there was this snorting where you force all the thoughts out of your head.
Right.
And as you keep doing it, you completely empty, through breath control, everything in your head.
Yeah.
When you move all the furniture out of your head, the only thing that's permanent is what remains.
Right.
And so that's kind of how it operated for me. But, when I descended and reintegrated, a lot of bad things happened to me. There was a period of several years where I drank nonstop. And, of course, then I stopped that, too, and I moved on into other things. And, I went through enormous difficulties in the American continent and then in Hawaii. And it only just really started sorting out for me and changing for me when I met Suzanne about, I think it's 12, 13 years ago now in Maui. Mm. And that was all scripted, too, the way that happened. Good grief. And next thing I knew, I was in Europe. And from that point on, things have been, just a heck of a lot better.
Well, as I listen to your stories, I realize that you're totally mad. And then
absolutely. And
then I realize, well, if I listen to your stories and I get your stories, that means I'm totally mad too.
Well, Robert, there's certainly an argument for that, and of course you cannot find the truth until you do go mad.
That's
I will
true.
say that right off the bat. Until you go mad, and the reasonable mind, the logical mind, is put aside, you can't experience the truly eternal supernatural realities. You must go mad in terms of what the world considers to be sane.
I agree.
You look at the lives, of all these people.
Yeah.
In the past, you will see that they also were considered in this manner. And there's a critical point here. Yeah, there would be one thing if this was all going on in my head, and I was the only witness to it and everything else. But there were always so many other people around who were having the experience of what was going on through me, at least as an observer or a bystander that actually witnessed a lot of these things, that then you've got to go, well, there's a bit more happening here, And even when some of the most outrageous things happened to me, with a few exceptions, there was always someone else around who saw it too, like the time of flying saucer landed right in front of me, and they got out of it and were talking to me like like that, And there was one of the most trustworthy people from our community, actually Britt Hume's brother, Douglas Hume, Britt Hume from Fox News.
Right.
Douglas Hume was there, and if there was anybody who was known for telling the truth and who just would not lie, even for his best friends, it was Douglas. And so that gave it, a real stamp of approval, too. And at the point when I met the man on the beach and I came back and all these phenomenal things were happening after my kundalini rose, Douglas went all the way out to California to check on my story, okay? And he actually went to Limekiln Creek, ran into Donovan, ran into several other people who all confirmed what happened that day. Oh, what I didn't mention was I had gone down there with 3 heroin addicts from San Francisco that I had known from D.C., and I was trying to get them off of heroin. I thought I would take them out to a beach, down in Big Sur. They would take acid, and maybe they could be healed. So that's what I was doing there in the first place. And, of course, this did not work. And toward the end, when evening had fallen, they were going, we got to get back. And I said, okay, well, I'll go back with you. And one of the people there was about 10 other people there. One of the people said, no, you should stay. And the man on the beach went, yes, you should stay. And that's the one thing I regret more in my entire life is doing that. And so I get back to San Francisco, and one of these guys, he really wanted to get off the heroin, so I put blankets up over all the windows, and we're sitting in there with this enormous hookah, the kind that has like 6 nozzles coming off of it. And there was like 40 or 50 pounds of pot in the place because that's how they were financing their habit and everything, dealing these large amounts of pot. And I would take an ounce or 2 at a time and put it in this big hookah, and he and I would just sit there and keep smoking, and this went on for a couple of days, and he wasn't getting high or anything. And at a certain point, there's a knock on the door. And I go to answer the door, and there's this little guy with his top hat on that says Dr. Love on it. I didn't know at the time, but it was Charlie Manson. And he comes in, and he goes, Danny. He goes, what are you doing, man? He says, aren't you getting high? Don't you want to get high? And he goes, no, man. I'm trying to quit this and that. And Manson walks over to the window and rips the blanket off, and the sunshine comes barreling in. And he goes, you want to face the day like this? That was it. It was over. Anyway, later the Manson thing happened, and the FBI, which was looking all over the country for me because of this thing they set me up with, which John Hall was actually along for the ride with that too, and one of the guys that were later saw in Petersburg. They publicized all over my wanting poster and the parents of all these young people who I had befriended in different parts of the country because, I was attracting people all over the place. So they get in school buses and try to follow me to wherever I was, and not unsuccessfully, I might add, most of the time, and that was how I wanted it. And they publicized the fact that I was associated with Charlie Manson, and that I was really, really criminally insane, where Ezra Pound had been held years earlier. They had this new program happen, and they were releasing people out into the community. And one of them was Feats Robinson, who's 6'6", 300 pounds, the most remarkable athlete I'd ever seen in my life. But he had this little peculiar problem where he liked to rape nurses and strangle them, and he had done this to 5 or 6 of them. Anyway, they decided to release him, and he promptly, within a week, raped and strangled a nurse, on the grounds, and was back in, and released several others, but they wouldn't release me. They said I was too dangerous, and I hadn't done anything. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, if it hadn't been a Harvard lawyer who walked one day onto the ward and said, hey, what's your story? And I started speaking to him, and he went, look, man, I'm going to help you get out of here. He says, but don't you mention Lao Tzu or the Tao anymore, okay, or any of these things, And I said, okay, and that's kind of how I got out.
So in the span of about 15 minutes, you've name dropped John Hall, Britt Hume's brother, and Charles Manson. That's good. That's good. So what was your take on Manson? What was he like?
He was a jerk.
Yeah.
That's all I saw. He was a vicious, nasty, dark-side individual. But see, I had no context for him. I didn't know anything about Charlie Manson at the time, and I didn't. All I saw was he was this little guy who was the sort of person I would run into here and there who was totally negative and coming from a place of and people like this would often show up, like when I had groups. I would have sometimes large groups of people around me in the park or different places, and especially there would be a lot of young women and girls even in some cases, and so there took to be some of these guys who would come and hang around just to get laid with the girls that were there. I finally tumbled on it and called attention to it. But anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So then occasionally somebody would show up who would just be like completely negative toward it, and I would have to deal with them. And generally I could very effectively do that, not because I was doing it, but because the force that was in me had pretty much the answer to everything.
Yeah. So did you ever run into Robbie Robertson, the band, and those guys up in upstate New York at all?
Yeah, sure. I had met all of them here or there. I got an interesting story I can tell you about, by the way. Anyway, Richard Manuel became a good friend of mine because I had a lot of cocaine during a certain period of time when I was in Woodstock. Another interesting thing happened. This guy, Shelley, he had kilos and kilos of it. He had some sort of South American connection. So he would give me large amounts just because he liked me. So here I was with the finest item, and that was the most desirable at that time. And one way or another, and Richard had a really bad problem. He would disappear in the bathroom for hours at a time just shooting coke, and didn't even get that much time to hang out and talk with him. And but anyway, I was brought over to their house by this guy, Billy, Smiling Billy, we called him one time. The guy that actually hooked me up with getting the item to them. And I walk in, and he introduces me to Levon Helm and Rick Danko and these guys. And one of them says, "Hey, go on in the other room, man, and get in line." And I don't know. So I go in the other room, and there's like a couple of guys in front of me, and I'm standing there. I don't know what's going on. And then I hear these noises coming from inside the room, and it's a girl. And, what the hell? So finally, the guy says, "Okay, your turn." And I walk in there, and I'm not walking over there. I turn on the light, and there's this girl that I had seen earlier that day in town, who had just shown up in town. She was about 15. And they were all like, gang sharing her. And I went, "Oh, man, I don't want any part of this." And I walked away from that. I don't want to put that label on these guys. Rock stars do different things. And all of them weren't there. And, but it is something that happens. And, Richie later, he hung himself. I guess he was really high on drugs. And that was because Stevie Winwood had taken his girlfriend.
He was incredibly sensitive, Richard Manuel.
Oh, he's a beautiful human being. I really liked him. Had it not been for the driving, he was a really sweet guy. And he was just a beautiful wife, a lovely lady. I think she was actually even a Jehovah's Witness. But they were just such sweet and wonderful people, which was an expression of the kind of guy that he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that whole thing with the band got really nasty with Robbie and and Garth and
right.
and Levon, especially with Levon, and he kind of screwed him out of everything, really.
Yeah, I didn't know the details of that kind of thing. We never really discussed. I was always just trying to make music with.
Yeah, this is later on. Robbie, I mean, this is like in the last 10 years. Like he took all the publishing from the band. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he separated himself from the band early on and wanted to go solo with this whole thing. He moved over to Montana or somewhere like that, somewhere up in that area. And there was this rumor running around that he was what the heck was the name? Michael Scorsese's boyfriend or something.
Well, they lived together. They lived together in New York City. They shared an apartment together.
Oh, okay. So there was something going on. I have no idea what.
Yeah,
it's like the Richard Gere Jurgle story, man. I have no idea how real any of that is.
You know that Robbie Robertson is part Jewish?
Didn't know that.
He's Jewish and he's Canadian, Native American, right? So he's his mother is Canadian, whatever Native American is just Canadian, and his father is Jewish, and so he shares these two interesting sort of tribal affiliations. Yeah.
I didn't know that. One interesting thing though was prior to all of this, when I was locked up at John Howard Pavilion, my girlfriend Darren, who was very faithfully visited me a lot of the time. That's where I also read Lord of the Rings for the first time in 2 days, as a matter of fact. Couldn't put it down. But my girlfriend brought me 3 albums while I was in there, because you could get a record player every now and then and take it into your room. And she gave me the Beatles' White Album, Big Pink from the band, and Sweethearts of the Rodeo.
That's the Byrds, right?
Yeah. And, oh, my God, that was... and it's funny because later on, then there I was hanging out with, one of the principals.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Well, you have lived an incredibly rich and roguish life, and now here you are in Europe, hanging out, blogging to the universe. And you still have a very rich internal life. So
that I do.
Yeah.
Not much externally, but sure internally.
So what's up for you, like in the next week, next couple of weeks, next few months? What's on your cosmic date planner?
Well, as if I know, but anyway, I do have a very special guest coming to visit me at the end of April. I'm not going to say his name. People might even be able to intuit who it is. It's someone I'm associated with, and. But I think, it's always best not to mention things like that for whatever the reason. Maybe the other person would object. But that's going to be quite an experience, I have a feeling, and we're going to take off to a town on the Bodensee that I love to go to, where really incredible things happen to me every time I go to this town with someone else. My friend Glenn went there with me, and my friend Roy, and now this other friend will be going there with me. So that should really prove interesting. And I have a supporter here that lives right in the area near here who is a doctor and who has been donating to me for the last year or so. And I come to find out I live 9 kilometers away, so he and I go and take walks in the woods every now and then. He's a really sweet guy. And then other than that, I really need to get this last novel of mine finished. I mean, I've got like about a week's worth of work, but I keep putting it off and delaying it. I've got to do that. And otherwise, I think I might like to go and visit my friend Jim Core in Ireland, but that'd probably be more toward the summer. He's the guy from the Coors.
Right.
Then I don't really know. I know a lot's coming up for me, but I don't really know what it is. So a big percentage of me and what I do is reliant upon situations appearing. And I really don't have all that much going on. I mean, there are any number of people that write and say, hey, I'm going to be in the area. I'd like to come and visit. Can I come by? And this and that. And I have to juggle a lot of that also because Suzanne is, she can get a little, she's a wonderful person, but she can get a little bent out of shape if I start having too many guests coming in and out, Then
right.
It's always unpredictable how they might behave or what might happen. And then, of course, the supernatural stuff starts happening. And that gets a little dicey because she does not share my aggregate mental collective about what's real and what isn't. I mean, you might even say she's an agnostic. And though she has come to understand that there's a lot more going on than what you can see as a result of exposure to me, she's still, and I always find that a little strange, that she turns out to be like that and I'm like this. But I realize that that's probably all for the best because it puts me in a situation with someone who, we're basically friends at this point, more than anything else. And, it's just someone whose protective custody I've been put into until such time as my wings develop to the point where I can fly on my own, I guess.
Well, I mean, it sounds to me like there's some balance there, I mean,
exactly.
If the person that you were living with and cohabitating with was in the same state that you were, only their own version of it, it probably could get pretty weird after a while.
Yeah, I suppose that could happen too, because if there's any one thing that can drive people apart, it's the way they view their respective religious affiliations. That's one reason I make it a point not to have any. I don't really, if I see God through any lens, it's basically the Hindu and Buddhist format.
Mm-hmm.
But I just generally address him as Lord, or if I'm speaking of Lady Nature, then that, but it's more generic, I don't really place any particular disciplines or affiliations upon the way I identify with it because it's incomprehensible. It's indefinable. And the idea that this kind of thing can be labeled or put in a certain, like a schematic where it can be viewed in an individualized sense, it's limiting, at least from my perspective. I recognize the supreme personality of Godhood and Lord Krishna in that regard. And so I guess if I do identify with a prototype, that would be it. But generally, it's always just extremely generic with me.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a special kind of generic. It's the most special and profound kind of generic that you could probably dial up. So, which is ironic too, isn't it? Really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, my friend, this has been a great hour of sharing, and I really am. It was great taking us through that labyrinth through memory lane. That was some great tales.
Yeah, well, it was interesting for me to be recalling it. I don't think upon those things much.
Yeah.
And it's kind of odd that it came out like that. I think it'll make for, interesting listening for the people who tune into this. And of course, I'll let everybody know that it's coming on Friday. But I'm just, as some of my last words, I would like to tell those people listening in that, honest to God, I don't take myself all that seriously, and I don't even really like myself that much. And I wouldn't want to give the impression that there was anything, high muck about me or really exclusive or that I was any better than anyone else. It's very important that people understand that that's just not where I'm coming from. I will never be coming from there. And I don't want to fall according to the shortcomings that would come about if I were to see myself in any way as, something, extraordinary in relation to other people.
Well, it's kind of a trap, I mean, once you start to,
see yourself in that light, it's pretty much, you're cutting yourself off in a big way.
And you would be wrong.
Yeah, and and we all have our. I mean, I think that the most I don't know, turned on or insightful or clued in people understand this, and they all have their own sort of safeguards and their own mechanisms to sort of trick themselves or remind themselves in some ways that they're not the center of the universe,
Exactly.
It's like I was talking to somebody the other night, and they were saying, "Well, don't you know who you are? And I really wish you would, have a greater understanding about, your prana and your magic and da 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 da." And I'm like, yeah, that's great. I get that, right? But I don't ever want to get to a point where I'm no longer surprised.
Yeah. Well, I despise vanity.
Yeah.
In any case, man, I can't stand to view it in other people. It embarrasses me for them, and I always check in myself to see if I put on airs or have any kind of vain like leanings. That's something I try to stamp on really quick, at least in myself, not in others.
Yeah, I mean, for me, once you stop being surprised, I think it's close to being over.
Yeah. Well, you're going to get a lesson shortly.
Yeah, it's like, somebody says something, they're like, this was great, and, you really had some insight, or I'm always surprised. I'm always surprised that somebody gets it, you know what I mean? I never take it for granted, yeah. So, anyway, well, Viz, this has been a great hour, and, again, thank you for taking time out and starting your day, ending mine, and, we'll hook up down the line and continue to have our little chat through the ethers here. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoy talking with you.
Well, it's been a real pleasure for me, Robert, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. I must say, interacting with you is a very, very fluid thing, and there's very definitely a simpatico operating there, and I'm grateful for that, and I thank you for your part of it. All
right. Well, you're welcome, and have a wonderful day. And you know what? I have a feeling you will.
Yeah, thank you. I'm hopeful. So anyway, I'll see you when I see you, or Wiederhören. I'll hear you when I hear you.
Happy trails.
Happy trails. Aloha.